Some pivotal moments in life do not announce themselves with the dramatic rumble of thunder or the blinding flash of lightning. Instead, they steal into our days disguised as any ordinary afternoon, carrying with them a fragile handful of words capable of either healing a fractured heart or shattering it entirely. I had rehearsed those exact words 1,000 times in the quiet theater of my mind, turning them over and over like smooth river stones. Yet, when I finally stood before her beneath the golden spill of warm afternoon sunlight, the frantic drumming of my own heartbeat echoed so loudly in my ears that it completely drowned out my voice. I genuinely believed, with every fiber of my being, that I was on the absolute brink of losing the one person who meant everything to me in this world. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the quiet, tearful sentence she whispered with shimmering eyes. "Why didn't you say sooner?" Before we continue down this winding path, if you truly believe that kindness, unyielding patience, and gentle second chances possess the quiet magic to alter the course of human lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your honest thoughts, pass this story along to someone whose heart you care about, and subscribe to Midnight Tales for more deeply emotional stories that linger in your thoughts long after the final screen fades to black. The golden afternoon sun poured in cascading ribbons through the dusty windows of the cozy lakeside cabin, where a tight-knit circle of our dearest friends had gathered to celebrate a lazy weekend getaway. All around us, people were laughing, grilling food over glowing embers, and snapping photographs while soft summer breezes drifted lazily through the towering pine trees, carrying the earthy scent of resin and pine needles. Yet, despite the buoyant, cheerful atmosphere buzzing all around me, my mind was hopelessly trapped and suffocating inside years of heavy, unspoken emotions that I had carried in secret. My name was Rowan, and for nearly 4 painfully long years, I had secretly, desperately loved Mara. She was far more than just breathtakingly beautiful. She possessed that extraordinarily rare, radiant ability to make every single human being who crossed her path feel genuinely important, seen, and valued. She was the kind of person who effortlessly remembered obscure birthdays, offered words of fierce encouragement to total strangers on the street, quietly helped elderly neighbors carry heavy groceries without ever expecting a single ounce of recognition in return, and somehow managed to make the heaviest, most difficult days feel impossibly light with nothing more than the gentle curve of her smile. Our bond hadn't been forged overnight. We had become close friends almost by pure, beautiful accident after working side by side at a bustling local community center. Every single afternoon seamlessly bled into long, meandering conversations about our wildest dreams, cherished childhood memories, favorite worn-out books, and endless, steaming cups of bitter coffee. The more precious time we spent tangled in each other's worlds, the more fundamentally impossible it became to ignore what my stubborn heart had known from the very beginning. Yet, fear is a fiercely powerful, paralyzing warden. Every single time I mustered the fleeting courage to tell her how I truly felt, an insidious inner voice whispered warnings, reminding me that losing her cherished friendship entirely would hurt infinitely more than keeping my turbulent feelings locked away forever behind a wall of casual smiles. And so, I desperately convinced myself that sweet, agonizing silence was somehow a much safer harbor. Months quietly melted into years, and during all that wasted time, I stood idly by and watched golden opportunities slip through my fingers like fine sand. Our friends constantly and casually assumed we were already a romantic couple simply because of how naturally and effortlessly we understood one another. We would invariably laugh out loud at the exact same obscure jokes before they were even finished being told, instantly notice the subtle shadow that crossed the other's face when something was bothering us, and somehow always, without fail, end up sitting side by side at every gathering. People would flash warm, knowing smiles whenever they caught sight of us together, while I deliberately forced myself to stiffly pretend there was nothing more between us than a comfortable, platonic friendship. Then, everything tilted on its axis one deceptively bright, sunny Tuesday afternoon. Mara casually dropped the news into the afternoon air like a falling stone. She had officially accepted a major job offer in a bustling city far away. It was an astonishing, once-in-a-lifetime career opportunity she had secretly dreamed about and worked toward for years, and everyone around us immediately crowded in to shower her with enthusiastic congratulations. I forced a brilliant smile to my lips and joined the chorus, but deep down inside my chest, my entire universe felt like it was violently collapsing in on itself. She was packing her bags and leaving in a mere 3 weeks. Suddenly, every single excuse, hesitation, and rationalization I had manufactured over the years evaporated into thin air. I was faced with a stark, terrifying ultimatum. Either I finally confessed the untamed depths of my feelings right then and there, or I resigned myself to carrying a suffocating burden of bitter regret for the rest of my natural life. Those 3 short weeks swiftly transformed into the longest, most agonizing days I had ever endured. Every single morning, I fiercely promised myself that today would finally be the day I spoke up. Every single evening, I returned to my empty apartment deeply disappointed in my own overwhelming cowardice. I practiced elaborate speeches while driving down the highway, while standing beneath the pounding spray of the shower, and while staring blindly up at the dark bedroom ceiling late into the night. None of them ever felt quite right. None of them seemed good enough to capture the magnitude of what she meant to me. Then, the very day before she was scheduled to pack up her life and depart, our group of friends organized one final, bittersweet afternoon gathering at that familiar wooden cabin tucked quietly beside the lake. The weather was painfully bright, children's laughter drifted from nearby, birds sang joyous melodies through the leafy canopy, and the entire world looked witheringly, heartbreakingly beautiful. I looked around and realized with absolute clarity that life was never, under any circumstances, going to hand me a more perfect, pristine chance. As the afternoon sun slowly began to dip and fade, casting long amber shadows across the grass, Mara gracefully stepped away from the lively group and wandered slowly toward the weathered wooden dock that stretched out over the glittering, sun-drenched water. My legs felt extraordinarily heavy, as if weighted with lead, yet somehow my feet found a way to follow her lead. Every single heartbeat hammered furiously inside my ribcage like a trapped bird, as though my own body was desperately trying to stop me from speaking the words. She sensed my approach, turned around, and offered a soft, welcoming smile that nearly unraveled my resolve entirely. We stood there in a fragile, suspended silence for several long moments, watching the gentle, shimmering waves ripple and dance across the surface of the lake. I could barely draw a steady breath into my lungs. My hands trembled so violently that I instinctively shoved them deep into the pockets of my jacket to hide the betrayal of my nerves. For years, I had vividly imagined this exact conversation ending in absolute heartbreak. I had fully anticipated an awkward, crushing silence, a polite, well-mannered rejection, and perhaps even the permanent destruction of the friendship we had built. Even so, deep down in my soul, I knew with absolute certainty that the sharp sting of regret would hurt infinitely more than the sting of rejection. Drawing the deepest, most shuddering breath of my entire life, I finally tore down the walls and admitted everything I had buried so deeply for so many years. I told her that somewhere along our winding path, somewhere between our endless coffee shop debates, late-night volunteer work at the shelter, and countless shared sunsets, she had quietly, effortlessly transformed into the absolute most important person in my entire universe. I confessed that every single goodbye we had ever shared over the years had grown increasingly difficult because every fiber of my being wanted every meeting to stretch out and last forever. I confessed that I had been desperately, hopelessly in love with her for years, but had been paralyzed by the terrifying prospect of losing her entirely. She stood perfectly still, staring right at me in absolute silence without uttering a single word. For one agonizing, eternity-stretching moment, I truly believed I had just made the single biggest, most catastrophic mistake of my life. And then, I saw it. Tears welling up and spilling over the brims of her eyes. A small, breathtakingly tender smile broke across her face before she softly, almost breathlessly, asked the very question that instantly altered the trajectory of my life forever. "Why didn't you say sooner?" The entire spinning world seemed to screech to a sudden, complete halt. She confessed right then and there that she had been silently waiting for me to speak up for almost as long as I had been holding back. She had always firmly believed that I only ever saw her as a close, platonic friend simply because I had so carefully and stubbornly refused to ever cross that invisible line. She admitted that she had come dangerously close to confessing her own hidden feelings on multiple occasions. But fear had always intervened, terrified that she would make our comfortable friendship awkward and unbearable. Eventually, entirely convinced by my stoic silence that I would never share those kinds of feelings, she had accepted the distant job offer simply hoping that physical distance would finally help her move on and heal. Years of guarded silence had nearly robbed us both of the very happiness we had both secretly ached for. Neither of us could stop laughing through thick tears as the stunning realization washed over us. Fear had managed to brilliantly trap two hearts that had been hopelessly in love with each other all along. The elusive answer we had both hunted for so desperately had been sitting quietly right between us for years, buried beneath layers of unnecessary hesitation and unfounded doubt. Of course, life didn't magically become a fairy tale kind of perfect the moment that afternoon ended. Long-distance relationships demand immense sacrifice, unshakable patience, and countless late-night phone calls that stretch into the pre-dawn hours. There were undeniably lonely weekends, missed celebrations, and long, trying months filled with a heavy, aching uncertainty. Yet, this time around, we faced every single hurdle and challenge together as a team instead of standing completely alone. The physical distance could no longer separate us emotionally because raw, unvarnished honesty had finally stepped in to permanently replace our old fears. Almost a full year later, Mara packed her bags once more and returned home permanently after receiving an even better, more fulfilling career opportunity right nearby. This time around, as she stepped lightly off the train under another brilliant, welcoming afternoon sky, I wasn't afraid anymore. I broke into a run toward her, threw my arms completely around the magnificent woman I had almost lost to the cruel thief of silence, and realized in that sweet embrace that true courage does not mean the absence of fear. True courage simply teaches you that a love this profound is always worth facing your fears for. Perhaps someone reading this story today is carrying a heavy, secret weight of feelings they have hidden away in the dark for months or even years. Perhaps you find yourself perpetually waiting for that elusive, flawless moment that never quite seems to arrive. The harsh, beautiful truth is that perfect moments rarely, if ever, exist in the messy reality of life. Sometimes the greatest, most devastating risk you can possibly take is saying nothing at all. If this heartfelt story has managed to touch some tender corner of your soul today, please take a second to like this video. Share it far and wide with someone who might desperately need a small injection of courage today. Drop a comment below letting us know from which corner of the world you are watching, and make sure to subscribe to Midnight Tales for a continuous stream of emotional stories overflowing with hope and second chances. As a special request before we close the final chapter of this story, please leave a comment containing the words, "Never wait too long." Those simple words of wisdom might just be the exact catalyst that encourages someone else out there to finally speak their truth from the heart. As we strolled hand in hand along the grassy banks of that very same serene lake where everything shifted on its axis, I finally understood that love isn't just about stumbling across the right person in this vast world. Sometimes, it is entirely about finding the fierce, quiet courage to finally tell the right person how you truly feel before time quietly slips through your fingers forever. And on that warm, golden afternoon, beneath a wide sky painted in brilliant hues of hope, two people finally discovered that the happiest, most enduring endings often begin with the very words they were once most terrified to speak aloud.